live. Good day, Jenn. How are you?
I am wonderful. How are you, Michael?
I'm absolutely phenomenal.
You are always phenomenal.
The only way to be.
Agreed.
Um, so you are talking to me from Reno, Nevada.
I am talking to you from Reno, Nevada. Yes, I am.
Uh, so tell me a bit about your life and how you got involved in the challenge uh, lifestyle.
The challenge lifestyle? Hmm. I I was looking at coaching people as far as the challenge lifestyle, and I looked at what my struggles were. The first thing that I did was I wanted to write a book, which lots of people want to write a book, but 85% of them don't. And I lost my job working in foster care. So I've been working with people who are challenged for the most of my life in one capacity or another. And it was where I came from. I think we build our businesses and we relate to people who are going through similar struggles that we've gone through. I was afraid to write my book because I was afraid to talk about some of my story. I didn't want to hurt my mom's feelings. I still don't want to hurt my mom's feelings. My father's passed away, and I was never worried about hurting his feelings. My kids, though, six of my kids came forward and reported a family member that had been abusive. Once that happened, and I became, mama bear and angry and wanting to help them, I lost the fear to share my story. I never wanted my kids to be ashamed of who they were and afraid to tell their story and afraid to ask for help and build a toolbox and a skill set. And it was that when I lost my job, my husband said, "Well, why don't you write the book that you've been talking about writing?" And I had to think, do I want to talk about writing a book or actually write a book? But I decided to go ahead and write the book about my struggle. And really, the catalyst, I mean, the desire was mine, but the catalyst was wanting to be there for my kids, to advocate for them, never being afraid of their story, even if it might make other people uncomfortable, and never being afraid to talk about who they are and more embrace it as part of them. It doesn't have to label us.
Now, may I make a statement to you?
100%.
I hate the word disability.
Yeah.
I absolutely hate the word disability. I think disability labels the disabled community with a label that is uncalled for.
Hmm.
I feel that the challenge is more inclusive. Do you agree?
Yeah, I don't like the word disability. There's a lot of words that I don't think should be used, and that's definitely one of them.
I believe in the word challenge.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's where I come from on that topic.
Yeah, agreed. And they weren't disabled. They went through really tough challenges that they then had to work through and move forward with. That that's difficult. That's Challenges are really difficult.
Yeah.
But yeah, certainly I and I'll talk about this in a little bit, well, briefly, but I have a son who's autistic. The label helped us know and understand how he was different from us so that we could best serve him
Yeah.
and give him the I wanted him to have autonomy. I wanted him to have the most, normal life when his siblings were moving out and going to college. I wanted him to experience everything that was possible for him to experience. And I had to learn about that label and what it meant to be able to do that. It didn't matter to me what the label was. My desire to learn it was so that I could give him the best chance in his life with the challenges that he faced, which were different than the challenges that the other kids faced or that I've faced. It in no way was to label him or have him be considered disabled. It had nothing to do with that, but it was a way so that I could make sure he had the services and the support that were best for him in that situation. And it was the same with the kids when they went through the abuse and they reported it. Okay, what does this mean for you? How is it manifesting in your life? What are the challenges and struggles from that? And how can I best support you? And in the future, how can you best get support? So I wrote my story just so that they would know they didn't need to be afraid to
Phenomenal.
share who they are.
You are an inspiration to me.
Oh, thank you. Well, geez, I think we all are. And storytelling is one of my top values almost, if it's a value. I think the world can be helped through storytelling. The goal is to connect with people so that they feel less alone and to help to share what worked for us to help other people build their toolbox. And that's what I wanted to do with the book. But then I realized I'm one story. So I started my own podcast almost 4 years ago in May of 2017, 9 months after my book was published. I started a podcast because I wanted everyone to have a chance to tell their story of struggle to success and what their tools were. I want the world to feel less alone. I've only gone through my own certain amount of challenges. Mine aren't the same as yours, that aren't the same as any of my kids, that aren't the same as my neighbors, but we all have them,
We
right?
all, I have my own struggles. I
Yeah.
have diabetes
Mm,
on top of my cerebral palsy. So that's a struggle. Not,
yeah.
not much of a struggle, but it's a struggle still a thing.
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
when you add that to the cerebral palsy, it's a compounding you know, it it's a compounding effect, and it's totally
I love that you brought up compounding effect. I do everything through the theory of compound interest. And my kids used to laugh at me, but when they hit the point in math that they were learning about compound interest, I got so excited because I think I have this firm belief that everything in life is compound interest. And that is small, daily, easy things that can work for you or against you. We do them all the time. We have negativity in social media, and if we allow that small daily, it's easy to do, right? You just jump on social media and it's negative, it will have a compound interest effect. Just like your health, diabetes for one person is one challenge, diabetes for you with cerebral palsy is a compound interest effect, right? So everything in life though works on compound interest and it's going to work for you or against you. And when you can choose it, you should do it where it works for you. You can't choose diabetes or cerebral palsy. You can manage it well, but it's going to be a challenge that you can't necessarily control. But those challenges, those things that we can control, our friends, how much time on social media, who we talk to, who we surround ourselves with, the type of job we have, our attitude, the things that we can control, it's all compound interest. So we choose whether it's working for us or against us.
absolutely. I love the attitude. You are absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
And I think we're at the 13-minute mark. Do you want to start your talk now?
Certainly, I will. I'm doing this very differently from any talk I've ever done. This is on challenges. I'm an NLP practitioner, and we do
Oh,
open and go
Um,
ahead.
I met Tony Robbins
Lucky?
twice.
That's amazing. Well, he made it cool to talk about NLP, right? And
Exactly. That's the tie-in. He is
that
absolutely incredible.
yeah.
In fact, I've approached him to talk to my group, and I'm hoping he is going to. So I'm just waiting to hear back from him. So at any rate, I will let you continue. Ha-
Okay. So I'm not using any slides. I'm just going to talk. I will be reading, so I'm not distracted. I have this all set up for you. I'm really grateful to be here today and discuss some of my stories with you, which is how I've decided to structure our time together.
Okay,
Storytelling, go ahead.
I'm gonna sit back and drink my coffee.
All right, Lucky, go ahead. You do it.
Okay, I will.
Storytelling is an incredible way to connect with people, to help the listener, which is you, to feel less alone and to build more tools and skill sets together, which we've already touched on a little in our conversation. When Michael contacted me, he let me know this summit was designed to help with the perception of the challenged person. And certainly the word challenge can mean many things. Michael having cerebral palsy means we know what some of his challenges are. He just mentioned diabetes, which of course we can't see. Often challenges lie under the surface. I'm going to discuss some of my challenges and what the silver lining was in each situation, then sum up what consistent silver linings have been and how I recognized those. My goal today is to touch people in such a way that you come away looking at humanity in a different light. The first story I'm going to share with you is growing up in dysfunction. I mentioned I'm a published author. My book is called Hello, My Name is Warrior and Princess. Also, I will give away a PDF copy of a book for anyone who wants it. You can just let Michael know and I'll email it to you or he can. I've been extremely disconnected to the places I've lived growing up and ambivalent about people. I've always had this tremendous conflict about really letting people in. I want to, but I've been afraid to. I was taught growing up that people have an outstanding propensity to cause an inordinate amount of pain, both physically and emotionally. What got me through growing up and probably saved me was this innate ability to disconnect from everything, which is also what I've struggled with as an adult. I struggled with writing my book because I didn't want to hurt my mother, like I mentioned. That wasn't a lie. I don't want to hurt her, but I was protecting myself more than her. And I'd grown to believe the protection lie that I was telling myself. It became quite a shield of righteousness in my life, and it was really hard to let go of. From the young frightened child, the confused adolescent, the young adult to me in my 40s and now 50, sharing my story helped me get better with connecting with people, which is a huge reason I encourage other people to do it. In my life growing up, I was molested. Dangerous men were allowed in our home, which created many issues. I remember when we were robbed, and I was a latchkey kid at about 6 out of necessity with a babysitter that lived across the street from our house. And as a child, I often felt alone and responsible for keeping the peace and maintaining balance. I was exposed to sexuality, drugs, and alcohol at a very young age. We experienced poverty, and I was surrounded by physical and emotional abuse. Sometimes that was directed at me, and sometimes I was exposed by watching my mother be abused. My parents divorced when I was 6, and my dad moved to another state. I only saw him 5 times after their divorce, which ended up being a blessing. He was an intensely angry alcoholic, and his outbursts of anger and violence were common, including many times that I watched him beat up my stepmom and brother. But one time when he beat her up so badly, he broke her nose, and explaining all of that to the police when they arrived, and yet nothing happened. My third grade teacher was Miss Carolyn St. Jean. She was a driving force in the person I am today. She didn't have any idea how much she would change the trajectory of my life. She was a 20-something-year-old teacher in her fourth year of teaching when I skipped into her classroom in 1977. I had hated school the year before. I was lost, confused, constantly searching, desperately wanting love, guidance, and some hugs. And I'd received the opposite from my second grade teacher. I found all of those things with Miss St. Jean. My home life was a mess, and without realizing it, I was searching for something that I was missing. Miss St. Jean was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. She even smelled beautiful. Clean, fresh, pretty. She was tall and thin. Her hair and eyes were dark brown. She had high cheekbones. She was as graceful as a ballerina. She looked like a model. She had long, straight hair and wore a different colored headband to match each of her outfits. Miss St. Jean was kind, loving, and ran a strict but warm classroom. In her classroom, I was smart, I was special, I was important, and I was worth it. She instilled such a massive amount of self esteem in me, made me feel so good about myself that in the future, when my home life got much uglier, I would think back to her and know there was someone who cared about me. Her lessons got me through the toughest times in my life. The reason that I have always known I was worth it was because I was worth it to her. She taught me compassion, empathy, and the ability to make a huge impact by just reaching out and being yourself. There's something to that theory that you can make a huge difference in somebody's life without even knowing it. It's exhilarating to know we can have such an enormous impact on someone else, even in passing, without ever knowing it. She taught me so much more than math and reading. She taught me to strive to be a better person, to be more than I think I am. I can thank her over and over again, but it will never be enough. She gave me the gift of self worth. It was the summer of 1987, after my junior year in high school. I was 16 years old and life was full of possibilities. I had dated someone my entire junior year of high school. Then he broke up with me, and my entire world screeched to a halt. I was devastated. Everything I felt as a child came rushing back, being not good enough, not worth it, unlovable, damaged, broken. My heart was shattered into a million pieces. And then there was Billy. He was from a small town nearby. He drove his motorcycle back and forth to summer school. He smoked. And while I was in summer school for a driver's ed class, he was there to retake classes. He had that bad boy sensuality that made him seem older than he was. I had spent enough time living in dysfunction that there was something familiar about Billy. I was drawn to him because of that, because he was a bad boy, because he was interested in me, and because of my recently very broken heart. I saw him only at school, and I turned him down when he asked me out. He played with the big boys, and I was not stupid enough to want to be alone with him. There was a pond we all went to in the summer called Big Rock. We'd swim and have fun. I went with my friends, and I wore my black one piece swimsuit with the low back and the spots that were open on the sides, paired with my jean shorts. Billy was there hanging out with the partiers, drinking 2-liter plastic bottles of wine coolers and smoking weed. He stopped when he saw me. He came over and we chatted for a minute. I told him I wasn't into drinking or smoking weed, so I didn't want to hang out with him. Plus, I came with my friends. Billy stopped smoking and drinking after I commented about it. I mentioned to him that I wanted to go home and he offered to give me a ride. I was nervous about being alone with Billy, but I really thought leaving the party was in my best interest. I got on the back of his motorcycle and he handed me a partially empty 2-liter of wine cooler to hold. I was dumping it out slowly while we were driving because I was afraid he was going to want to drink more and he was driving. We came to a four-way stop and Billy didn't turn the way home. He headed the opposite direction. I told him he was going the wrong way and he said he was going the right way because today was the day I would lose my virginity. I was terrified and I was trapped. We were in the middle of nowhere in Vermont on dirt roads. Getting off the bike wouldn't do me any good. There was no place to run and no one around. My blood ran cold and fear raced through me. Billy pulled over and I got off the motorcycle. I was holding this near empty bottle of wine cooler and he was mad because he knew I didn't drink it, which meant I dumped it. I told him I didn't want him to drink and drive. He grabbed my hand and dragged me into the woods. He let go of my hand by a stream, so I went into it and sat down. The water was freezing, but I didn't want to leave the safety of it. He took my hand and he pulled me out. He told me to sit down. I sat in the leaves and the twigs. I kept telling him I didn't want to be there. I just wanted to go home, Today was not the day I was supposed to lose my virginity. He pushed me down on my back and jerked my shorts off. Struggling just seemed to make him more determined and more rough, but I struggled anyway. I was crying and telling him I didn't want to lose my virginity. He lay on top of me, trying to kiss me, being rough and shoving his tongue in my mouth. As I continued to talk and cry, he covered my mouth with one hand, roughly sucking on my neck. I was terrified of having hickeys, any outward sign of what was happening to me. Already, I didn't want anyone to know. He moved down my body, letting go of my mouth and instead wrapping his hand around my throat. I wanted to be anywhere but there. Leaves, tree roots, and sticks were digging into my back, only adding to my discomfort. The smell of the woods, usually a comfort to me, now felt suffocating. I watched the sun play through the leaves and the trees, dancing above me, but it seemed more ominous than comforting. There was no beauty in the woods for me that day. The only constant was my tears and my pleadings, now completely in vain. Fortunately, it was over fairly quickly. Billy got off me, stood up to fix his shorts, and told me I was a terrible lay. He walked away as I laid in the leaves and sticks, sobbing uncontrollably. From a distance, I heard the motorcycle rev up and leave, and I didn't even care. I wanted to stay where I was and silently slip away. Today wasn't the day I wanted to lose my virginity. Billy wasn't the person. After some time had passed, I felt my body throbbing and I realized I had stopped crying. I got up and decided that, of course, I wanted to live, although I wasn't certain how to move forward. I went to the river and rinsed myself off with the cold water I now seemed impervious to. My shorts and flip flops were nowhere to be found. I walked out of the woods, away from the river, in the direction of the road, barefoot with only my bathing suit on. I found the road eventually and decided to hitchhike home. The first car that approached slowed to a stop. It was Billy's grandmother. I had seen her once before. She told me to get into the car and that when Billy got home and yelled at her to pick me up and give me a ride home, she left to come and find me. She apologized for her grandson and told me he would probably end up in jail with all the charges he had pending: breaking and entering, theft, and robbery. She was nearly blind, and I might have worried about her driving in the now dark, except part of me hoped we'd get into an accident. Part of me still wanted to die. I've always been disappointed that I didn't turn Billy in. I am the biggest advocate for girls to speak up and stand up for themselves. I succumbed to my fear and insecurities, and I stayed silent. As a woman, I've experienced almost a year of infertility. I had 7 day surgeries and was maxed out on both medications to assist with fertility, Clomid and Provera. For women who have also experienced this, you understand the roller coaster of emotions that you go through. Certainly, there are tremendous feelings of hope. However, there are also feelings of exhaustion, doubt, terror, wondering if you're losing your mind, feeling as if an exorcism should be performed because you're not yourself, and the new person who's taking up residency in your mind and body isn't nearly as pleasant in personality. Many women, including myself, feel incomplete as a woman, as much of our sensual identity as a woman can be tied up in our reproductive system. I waved my white flag 1 year into infertility when I got to the point of in vitro fertilization. For mamas that take that route, my hat is off to you. I was exceptionally blessed to actually become pregnant 7 times, which might seem like a contradiction to infertility. I've given birth 4 times and I've miscarried 3 times. On my infertility journey and from listening to other women's stories, it's possible and would not have been uncommon for me to feel as though I was broken, to feel I was less of a woman because my female parts didn't work correctly, or even to feel as misguided as to believe I was being punished for some unknown act. And I would say I felt all those emotions at different times throughout my fertility journey to some extent. 2 of my miscarriages were early on. However, in my 7th and final pregnancy, I miscarried twins at 19 weeks. It was traumatic physically and emotionally. My doctor told me to collect any tissue that I passed. As I sat delivering the twins in pieces over the course of days, I couldn't find the courage to gather and store the pieces in Ziploc baggies to drop off at my doctor's office. Although it doesn't make sense logically, it was less traumatic for me to flush the toilet. I ended up having 3 surgeries due to this miscarriage. I had the D&C, and in the next few months, I continued to hemorrhage. I was put on 2 birth control pills a day in an effort to at least slow down my bleeding, and I vomited until I burst the blood vessels in my eyes. I ended up back in surgery for a vaginal hysterectomy, which went well until I told a nurse something was wrong. I was bleeding internally and rushed back into surgery with not one but 2 surgeons. I was later told that they opened me up hip to hip, took everything out, and suctioned my abdominal cavity. I received 5 blood transfusions, 3 of which were run through a machine from the blood in my abdomen and given back to me. The doctor told me the arteries supporting my uterus had been cauterized. However, one of them was sputtering blood and the other looked like a fire hose. It took over 2.5 hours to stop the bleeding, and at one point, I was dead on the table. I was blessed at just under 16 years old to have an outstanding appointment with an OBGYN. Although I wasn't sexually active at this point, I had a positive experience with a male doctor who, to make matters worse, was even extremely attractive. He was gentle in both his demeanor and his physical examination of me. He told me that I would most likely go through infertility and may not be able to have children. This brief conversation, although a bit devastating to me, planted 2 seeds. One, that infertility would most likely be part of my future, but it also gave me the drive to expand my thoughts and beliefs to encompass out of the box ideas on how I would accomplish having a family, which was one of my highest values. After the birth of my first child, after infertility, my husband and I signed up for and completed foster care training. The details in the files of these children resonated with me, as although I had not been placed in the foster care system as a child, I had experienced much of what they had experienced, and I understood them. Even with the insensitive, targeted training on topics such as crisis intervention, drug and alcohol addiction, surviving trauma, stress reduction, conflict management, and suicide prevention, it was difficult to read through the files of what kids had gone through. In going through foster training, it can feel like you're filling out paperwork for a puppy, male or female, what ages, what gender, how many siblings, how many children are you willing to take overall? Are you open to different nationalities? What different diagnoses are you willing to take on? Fetal alcohol, autism, and the list goes on. It can seem cold and unfeeling and completely overwhelming. What I learned was to break down the questions and really feel into what I thought I could handle and make some tough decisions. I knew my home wasn't the right fit for any child, and not every child was the right fit for me. Once I had my parameters set, I also learned to let that go. My oldest daughter was 4 when I was licensed, and my second was born when she was 6. So I had written that I didn't want a child who was sexually abused as a parameter. Setting those parameters and then letting them go means that I took each child and each case one at a time, and I did end up accepting kids that had been sexually abused. I was a foster parent for 9 years while I was married and 3 more years when I was single, for a total of 12 years. I was then hired by a nonprofit to be one of 2 program supervisors and run the program. Together, she and I fulfilled the director's position. We worked with treatment level foster kids, which meant they had been through the most abuse and neglect and therefore usually were the toughest kids to work with. I was there for a couple of years when the program funding for my position was cut. And after an accumulative 15 years, I felt like my time in foster care was over and decided to work directly with the parents, similar to the ones that I had been training. The only thing I have been embarrassed about in my life is being married and divorced 3 times. In my first marriage, I so wanted to be married and start a family. I thought we'd work hard at it and be together forever. It was a happily ever after. I have high expectations in relationships because I'm willing to put in the work. They were 3 good men who weren't at all good for me. Each time I set myself up for failure without realizing what I was doing. The how and why of all three relationships isn't what I want to discuss, as that is a two-way story. When I got married, I took my vows very seriously. I believed in till death do us part and happily ever after. I was committed to the person and the covenant I made with the person and with God. I married the first time at 19, which seems ludicrous to me now. And I'm shocked that no one thought that that was ridiculous and counseled us to wait. We were only together for 3.5 years. He is the person that I went through infertility with. He left for basic training in the Air Force 6 weeks after we were married, and I loved that lifestyle. Certainly, though, him being gone half of every year, going through infertility, poor communication skills on top of being so young created a situation that was nearly impossible for us to battle. Because I was so young and we were together such a short time, very few people even know that I was married then. After my first divorce and feeling brokenhearted, I didn't allow myself to be vulnerable, which is one thing I did to set myself up for failure in future relationships. Keeping myself at arm's length emotionally meant I never really let anyone in, which is not healthy in a marriage. I also chose two men who were emotionally unavailable. In some ways, they were very different, but they were also very much the same, and I was never able to get very close to them. I went to therapy with 2 out of 3 of my marriages, which taught me more about myself, but ultimately pointed out how beyond repair those relationships were. Sometimes good people make bad choices, even when trying hard to make things work. I always believed you should stay and stick it out no matter what, but I also believe it's sometimes best to admit defeat, fly the white flag, and cut your losses. My second marriage lasted a decade. My third lasted 7 years. I was torn at that point between just staying single, continuing to be the best mom I could be, or being in a relationship and actually being at my most vulnerable. I knew that without doing my part, I would continue my own pattern. In relationships, I've been cheated on, ignored, verbally put down, and abused, and I've had a husband who went to prison. I've felt betrayed, lost, frustrated, and angry, but I learned valuable lessons with every situation, and I take responsibility for my choices. I also did a lot of work on myself so that I could be the healthiest for my kids first, for myself, and for my future. 18 children have blessed my life. I mean the number 18, not a child that is 18. I went through infertility, which I discussed, 7 pregnancies, which does kind of contradict infertility, I guess, in the end. I do know the pain physically, emotionally of infertility and the joy of becoming pregnant. I've had 1 hospital birth and I've experienced the beauty of 3 home births with a midwife. I've been a single parent and I've blended families as well as transitioning most of our kids now into adulthood. The highest number of kids we've had at home is 12, only 12 out of 18. But 10 to 12 kids in the house at one time was common off and on for many years. I was a stay at home mom for over a decade, homeschooling, breastfeeding, making baby food from scratch, a mom working in the corporate world for another decade, plus an entrepreneurial mom. Say that fast 5 times. I've been a single mom and experienced life with a blended family. In the end, I was blessed to have kids from everywhere. It's more than a yours, mine, and ours. It's an amalgam of foster children who aged out, adopted children, stepchildren, biological children, and even a foreign exchange student. It is awesome and hard, but worth it. I've been asked if I have a spreadsheet. So I did a video, kind of a spreadsheet outlining all the kids. I had to have all of it written down, and it took 2 times to record it properly, and I'm the mom, so I understand that it's hard to keep track of. The road to becoming mom of 18 is full of interesting twists and turns that led to this outrageously huge blended family I am so proud to have. I don't consider myself a parenting expert. However, I am a mom who loves all aspects of my family life, and I've embraced the lessons that I've been taught. Some of what I've learned has been on the job training, and some has been formal. I'm an expert in this area of life due to my time in of 29 plus years and due to the sheer volume of kids and the opportunity that gave me to fail forward. In retrospect, I will say I've been an incredible parent, and each day I gave it my all. Some days that looked like I was knocking it out of the park at 150%, and some days that looked like a fraction. My kids could sit and give you the list of times I've fallen short, let you know that I raise my voice too often, and not just because I'm from Rhode Island and volume is normal there. I've been an imperfect human trying to do it as the best job possible, definitely doing better than I was taught, but as most parents would agree, falling short of the bar that I set for myself. It would take me hours to discuss each thing we've gone through with these kids. So I'm going to give you the bullet point list. Anyone who is a parent will be able to relate to any and all of these situations. Being told 7 hours after the birth of my first daughter that she would not live past 2 days and that I would hold her for the first time after she had died. One adoption nearly fell through after 5 out of 6 months due to the parents changing their minds. Fortunately, once they met him, they let the adoption go through. Biological parents of foster and adopted kids and in blending family, my it's really difficult to work with the parents of the foster kids and your spouse's ex as well. My husband's wife had died. That was a real struggle to help these kids with those emotions. I adopted a baby born drug positive and went through 8 weeks of withdrawals with her. One child has autism, which I mentioned, which has its own set of challenges. I've had kids that have cut, had suicide attempts, have gotten involved in drugs and alcohol, have gotten bullied. We've gone through dating, sex, and birth control, anger issues, poor grades, piercings and tattoos, learning finances, anxiety, lack of motivation, being afraid to try things, not being able to find jobs or hating jobs that they have, the stress of being on their own, broken hearts, fighting amongst each other, teenage pregnancy, running away, reporting abuse from a family member, and me being an advocate as adults not having close relationships with three of them. That's a huge struggle for me. And I have one son, Christopher, who died. He was missing August of 2016. And in August of 2020, we got a call saying that they had found his body. So those are just some of the struggles I've been through with these 18 kids and challenges. Through everything that's happened in my life, both the good and the bad, as far back as I can remember, I've had an innate knowledge that God exists. I had tremendous faith that there was something better, something more in life, and I went on a mission to find it. When I was a senior in high school, I started asking friends what church they went to, and I tagged along. I was looking for a place that I fit in with the values that I wanted. Eventually, my friend Patty invited me to her church. By that time, I had been to so many churches. I told her to please not be offended when I didn't like it. Patty and I went with her family the next Sunday, and I was shocked. They spoke of strong family values and families that are together. I felt like I had found people who had similar values to mine. I was on board from that very first day with a desperate craving of family values and a semblance of what normal family was. It was a very strict church, and I felt that wouldn't be an issue for me as I was turning away from anything to do with alcohol. I'd never done drugs, and to this point, my experience with sex had not been positive. When I was divorcing the second time, I left that strict church. I had been part of it for 17 years. I'd always struggled to feeling like I could not completely be myself. I felt disappointed by the people who claimed to love God and each other, but had been the most judgmental group of people that I had been around. I had my name removed from the records of the church, and I have never looked back. That was 16 years ago. I knew I couldn't be completely myself and a member of this particular church. And honestly, I liked myself more than I liked the church. I was too strong. I swear sometimes. I have tattoos. I don't always wear super conservative clothing. And the church constricted my entire personality as I couldn't ever show all facets of who I am. I stayed so long because I still wanted this utopia I was convinced existed. And I was married to someone who belonged to that same church. In the beginning, I thought I was doing what was right. In the end, I realized any utopia we can attain is within us, not in restrictions. And in hindsight, it goes against any scripture and is more about control than about happiness. Now I'm happy being completely myself, loving God my way without restrictions. In my earliest childhood memories, I felt my faith as if it were part of the physical makeup of my body. It was an integral part in who I was. I'm very quiet about my faith and a strong belief in God. It's incredibly personal to me. I am thankful and grateful every day, not only for the great things in my life, but the struggles that continue to push the boundaries of who I am and allow me to grow. It's reassuring to me that not only is God there to lift me up, he is also there when I am flailing to help me, to help give me grace. My husband and I have finally found a church that we love, and it's something that I really missed. I am less passive about my faith in God now, which means I sprinkle it in and my love of God in everything that I do. I feel extremely grateful getting ready for school in the morning with my kids is when I felt so much love and connection with them. We always got ready together. We talked and laughed most mornings. One morning, when we were all together chatting about tattoos, piercings, strong personalities, one of my most quiet, shy daughters, who questions everything and was in high school at the time, noticed that I had raised them to embrace who they are and be unafraid, but I didn't embrace myself. She told me I should just be myself. The rest of them chimed in, offering the same support. Mom, we know who you are. Stop trying to be a perfect example and be you. People often comment that I have a big heart and what a blessing I was to the kids. What most people don't understand is that my kids gave me far more than anything that I could have ever give to them. The love I felt for them in trying my hardest to do a great job raising them was reflected back to the love they feel for me. The
Mm,
topic of challenges with raising kids is the direction I'm going with book number two, and several of them have given me insight from their perspective, which has deepened many of the relationships I have with them. I could have felt that those three marriages had been failures, that I was a failure. Instead, I decided to become an expert in regard to relationships. Due to what I experienced in those marriages and the ending of each of them, I became an expert in moving on through heartbreak and grief, being a single mom, dating respectfully, and blending families. I am now asked to be an expert speaker on the topic of relationships, from keeping them spicy to finding balance, creating date nights, boundaries, sex with kids in the house, not losing identity, among other things. I, at first inadvertently, reverse engineered my experiences and what could have been considered failures to utilize my knowledge to then help others.
mhm,
Being a foster parent gave me the opportunity to pay it forward. I knew from my own experiences, great kids can come from tough situations. And Miss St. Jean has taught me that one person can make a significant positive difference in the life of a child. I used foster care and parenting my biological and stepchildren as an opportunity to try to make a difference in my kids' lives. I signed up for the foster adoption program as I wanted the children who came into my home to know they didn't have to leave a home again. I did have some foster children that came and went, and I did say no to children more often than I said yes. I felt that if the situation didn't feel right for me, I was robbing another family of the blessings of having that child in their home, in the right home. For the most part, however, once a child came into my home, they stayed. I had the opportunity to impact those lives. Five adopted children and five that were in my home long term that I wasn't able to adopt, but I loved just the same as my four biological children, and later in my blended family, my husband's four children. Within my story of infertility, I made a decision to lean in and feel possibility. I felt the possibility of my body being able to conceive a child and the ability to bring that conception to delivery. I also strongly felt the possibility of family. And with my last three surgeries after that seventh pregnancy, I felt the possibility of my body healing. Less than a year after my hysterectomy, after working hard with a trainer and losing 35 pounds from the pregnancy and surgeries, I competed on stage in fitness competition. From falling in love for the first time my junior year in high school, being heartbroken, and shortly afterwards experiencing rape, I learned I can heal. I learned that I have strength. I was able to go to therapy in college, which helped tremendously. But I hit a point when I knew my struggle was an internal battle. I was trying to sort through my sexual baggage, and the fact that I really enjoyed and desired sex, but felt at odds since my introduction to sex was so dysfunctional from being molested and then losing my virginity to rape. I felt as if I shouldn't enjoy it or allow myself to enjoy it, as if my sexuality was a bad thing because of how it originated. The therapy I went through was the foundation of my healing. A cousin of mine that was about the same age as my mom offered to have me live in their house for the summer after my first year in college, as it was in the same town as a college that I went to. My cousin did a session of massage on me to help me let go of negative emotions, which actually helped a lot. I cried afterwards and thanked her, although at the time I didn't realize the impact it would have on me moving forward. I know now that she was a Reiki master and was doing a lot of energy work. And I had felt the release of a lot of baggage that I had been hanging on to. I knew that I had an internal strength. As an adult, I started doing quite a bit of public speaking. I used Miss Carolyn St. Jean as an example of someone in my life who had a pivotal, monumental impact on me. And I quickly realized that although I love talking about her and what a difference she made in my life, so many people knew the story, but the one person that didn't know was Carolyn. I was blessed to find her again in the same school, still teaching third grade. I flew to Rhode Island from Alaska, pregnant with 5 kids in tow in 2000, to tell Carolyn my story and to thank her. She didn't remember me specifically, which was even better. She had been just a teacher, running her classroom, leading by example. Carolyn deserved to be told that she had made a difference to me and how monumental that was. I feel honored I was given that opportunity. I clung to the knowledge and the feelings she inspired in me my entire life. And I visualized her and her classroom over the years when life was tough. If I had been worth it to her, I could be worth it to someone else. It became a goal not just to find people that made me feel worth it, but to make other people feel that way also.
Oh my
In Daring Greatly, author Brene Brown shares, we either own our stories, even the messy ones, or we stand outside of them, denying our vulnerabilities and imperfections, orphaning the parts of us that don't fit in with who and what we think we're supposed to be, and hustling for other people's approval of our worthiness. Let's use our stories, even the messy ones, to help each other. Think about the defining moments, big and small, in your life and share them. The stories you share will inspire others, give them hope, and help connect you with you in ways you can't imagine. It has been an absolute pleasure to share these stories with you. There is freedom in sharing stories, freedom in feeling seen and heard, freedom in the release of the negative emotions, and a focus on the positive learnings. My silver linings in these stories are worth, possibility, strength and sensuality, opportunity to pay it forward, success in relationships, connection and love, certainty, faith, and freedom. I learned to recognize them partially as something innate within me to always search for the best in every situation, and even more when I really began sharing my stories from a more raw and vulnerable space. When I dug in deep, it was impossible not to see the light in the darkness. I encourage you in your stories to uncover your own light in the darkness. There's a simple way to begin this process in your life. I call it the three gratitudes. Every day, you write down, morning or evening, three new things that you are grateful for. This trains your brain to search for the positive in the world, regardless of what's going on. There are some days when maybe making your bed or breathing is one of your gratitudes, and that's okay if that's where you're starting. Three things every day that are different than the day before. If you have children, this is how I used it with children. We called it high low. Everyone sits at the table, and in our house, that was pretty big table. And you go around. Every person gets a few minutes center stage. They are highlighted. They get to share one low. That's one thing that was negative about their day. Although I do not want you to do this in your three gratitudes challenge, it is important in a family and in your kids to allow them to share things that maybe are not fantastic. It allows them to be seen and to be heard. And it will help you really connect and keep a finger on the pulse of the heartbeat that's happening within your kids. I learned some really outstanding things with my kids sharing their low for the day. After they've shared their low, they share three highs, which are the three gratitudes, three great things about their day. What will you will notice, one of the many things you will notice is that your kids stop having lows and they start having way more than three highs. So their gratitude you watch them in less than 3 weeks start to look for the positive in their world because they know they're going to come home and share it at the dinner table with you. They're going to get the spotlight and you are going to see them and hear them and allow them to express how they feel.
Great idea.
I've had people in my life, teachers, mentors, coaches, therapists, pastors, people who do energy work who have helped me. I took the parts that worked for me, and that's now what I do for other people.
That,
I so appreciate being here today, Michael.
that is such a great idea. I
Oh,
love
high low. I love it.
that is such a great idea.
We've been doing it for 25 years now. So it definitely has worked wonders in our family. So
I have very few lows in my life. I do not allow myself any lows.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, for kids, that's why for adults, if you're doing the three gratitudes, you write three new things every day that you're grateful for. You do not write the lows. You don't focus on them. All you're doing is focusing on training your brain to find the good in the world. It's less than 2 minutes, three things that you write down every day. It takes a very little time and effort, but talk about compound interest over time. Suddenly you realize you don't really have lows and your highs are more than three. And it's easy at first, it's hard to think of them. And then it becomes easy and you have so many more. And when you do this with your kids, it happens so fast with kids. But the low for the kids is recognizing and hearing that they have struggled, and that's actually more conversational and touching base with them than it is it goes away on its own. The lows go away on their own with your kids, but it is a way for them to talk about stuff that they're struggling with, and that has been equally important as a parent connecting with my kids as those three highs or three gratitudes are. So
You have me in tears at
um,
several points in your talk. And oh my god, it is just so inspiring. You are absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
I
Every everyone's story is.
I would, geez, you are incredible.
Thank you. It was a pleasure sharing.
Thank you so much. I would. Oh, by the way, how can people get in touch with you to learn more about what you're doing?
Momof18.com is my website. So,
I
I mean, that's pretty so I was struggling with the name and the website, and I finally realized that those 18 kids, and my oldest biological daughter is 29 in a week of this recording, they're where I got all my skills and my drive and my ambition, and the reason why I wanted to do so much to help other people. So they are the umbrella of everything I do. So momof18.com has everything on it. It has the book and the ability to sign up for a free PDF, or I can set something up with you so you can send people a PDF. I want people to hear information, so I try to give everything away. On the website, it's a link to my free Facebook group, the Facebook page. The podcast is there. The book is there. Coaching. I offer 3 free 30-minute strategy session for anyone, whether no matter how they want to work with me. So there's some everything you never wanted to learn about me is on that website and what I do.
okay, thank you so much. I'm going to turn out the recording now.